Education as an industry has been through something of a crucible in the era of COVID since the year 2020. From political attacks in some states to the toll that the virtual systems had on the public education system, it has been through the ringer. So today we're going to talk about education. Welcome back to Achieving Minerva. My name's Sal and I am your host. For the next two episodes, I'm going to be laying out my two main gripes with modern education, both public instruction from K to 12 and also higher academia. Today I'm going to focus on college, both the cost and some of the modern teachings and expectations of our youngsters. So just to lay my cards on the table, I'm coming to this as someone who has spent the majority of my life in school. I graduated number 2 in my class in high school. In college, I double majored in biology and physics, minored in chemistry, Spanish, and psychology. And while that does sound like I spent 6 years in college, I only spent 4. So much of the crossover between biology and physics majors occurs that a chemistry minor was basically there naturally, give or take one course. And I used the CLEP testing system to minor in Spanish using only 2 courses. So psychology was really the only extra step there. But anyways, like most biology majors, I took the MCAT and dreamed of a future in a white coat and a stethoscope around my neck. And like many physics majors who write a thesis steeped in astrophysics, I imagined driving a probe on another planet or discovering the secrets of space-time. But neither of those really spoke to me when it all came down to it. After graduating with 2 bachelor's degrees, I took a year off school and found myself back into school afterwards, this time for a master's in biology. For a while, I had a job in the field of marine biology, and I realized that any position in the field of marine biology, or really any sort of ecological spun biology job, thinks that dream job is part of the compensation package. And while the jobs are super fun, they barely put food on the table for me, let alone the family I always wanted and now have. A few years after that, I moved over to being an EMT and lucked out in a decent paying system, which is not easy to find. And now I find myself in a position that I could have had for $2,000 of education at a community college. And while all my degrees have opened up doors, they don't open up doors in the fields of biology or physics per se. I will concede that my biology background made cruising through paramedic school a little easier than had I not already done a lot of the baseline training and reading. However, none of my degrees are required for the job that I have right now. And many of the doors that sometimes open up on my journey of life only open because I have a degree in anything. I have a degree at all. Because what the pieces of paper I paid thousands for actually give me access to is a badge saying, I meet this set of stereotypes a college student typically has, and a manager may find them desirable. I tend to argue with the premise that a degree actually says what society says it does about an individual. To this day, no job interview has ever cared or asked about what my GPA was, what any of the 5 theses I've written about are, or given me a test to find out that I hold a specific set of knowledge. In addition to my academic resume, I've been a part of the workforce in some capacity since I was 16. I've worked as a lifeguard, a Target associate, a truck driver, a chemist, another chemist. I've been a research assistant in 4 different academic disciplines, and I've worked in healthcare as I do currently. I've worked in a variety of industries, and for the most part, one thing is consistent. I was trained to do the job on the job. I would concede that some of the chemistry that I learned in school helped a little bit with some of the scientific jobs, but nothing that couldn't have been gained by paying better attention in high school level chemistry classes. Outside of those basics, everything was learned on the job, and I would challenge you to think about your job and the careers of your loved ones and ask 2 questions. What percentage of your functions and tasks did you learn while on the job? And did your formal education actually enrich your ability to do your current job? According to a Washington Post article from 2013, only 27% of college grads had a job related to their major field of study. What my life story so far ultimately points out is that if we as a society insist on telling 17 and 18-year-olds to choose a path of study in college that you want to pursue the rest of your life, oftentimes signing up for upwards of $50,000 of debt, then we as a society should decouple that insisting from the teaching that you should follow your dreams at the same time. Holding a certificate is a shortcut for the employer. The certificate gives off a signal that you have put in some arbitrary amount of work in an arbitrary array of subjects and have come out with a team of professors or TAs that have said your work is adequate, enough to pass these classes. And while a summa cum laude graduate at an Ivy League school can practically write their own paycheck, a 3.0 graduate at the same schools and a 3.0 graduate at any other state school in the United States have pretty much the same job market. I'm not arguing that a given individual shouldn't aim to achieve their dream. I'm mostly arguing that the average 18-year-old doesn't know what their dream is, and they shouldn't have to resign to a single dream at 18 until the retirement age at 60. And that the average 18-year-old should not go into a glamorous field of study that isn't going to pay the bills adequately. Instead, my argument is that free or cheap training should be available that actually reflects the job market skills. Or if you want those high-earning jobs, get the right kind of degree or find a cheaper option to get that job. Pretend for a moment that you're a senior in high school and you're working on the decision of college, primarily what you want to be when you grow up. Now add in what you were being told by your parents and any other significant adult at the time. If you're anything like me and my family, going to a 4-year college was basically non-negotiable. And if you're a little bit like me, then you were privileged enough that you could choose nearly any 4-year school in the country. Due to my academic record, athletic prowess, and parents willing and able to ensure my financial future with almost any tuition bill, the options were almost limitless. With all of the privilege I was subject to, it wasn't at all difficult to believe that I could do anything I wanted. The world was my oyster. I was entitled to all the spoils of the American dream. But it's worth noting that even for teenagers that don't have the trifecta of brains, brawn, and money, they are still encouraged with and seduced by those exact same lofty ideals that I was seduced with. And making that decision rashly ends up with a huge loan bill without the wages that were falsely promised to pay them. Many people have an upbringing similar to mine. You can do anything you want and the money will just magically come. Those sentiments came from my father primarily, who had a lot of confirmation bias going. He fell in love with computers in the 1970s, before computers were even on their trajectory to become what they are today. He had a career at the right time and in the right field to make an absolute killing. And he did genuinely love computers. He loved the puzzles of programming, the same things that many techies fall in love with as well, only without the high-stress tech industry that we have today. My father was still proving the concept of computers to the world, digitizing banks, backing up records for healthcare during an era when it was more of a, if you can do it, great. If not, we've been using paper for 100 years, no big deal type of sentiment, rather than a, if this doesn't work, our society will collapse type of sentiment. This is a little bit more prevalent now. Preventing the Y2K apocalypse that never came and the dot-com bubble pop was probably the most on-the-job stress my father ever had. My dad was also frugal and down-to-earth enough to save a bunch of money and retire before 60. So, of course, he genuinely believes that your dreams magically work out. He has no reason not to believe that. But to unpack that story a little bit, we have to start with college in the 1970s. According to the Education Data Initiative, the average annual cost of tuition at a 4-year university was $358. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $2,400 per year. Today, annual costs are in the ballpark of $10,000 per year. That's quadruple. In 1970, the median household income was $66,000 when adjusted for inflation. In 2022, that same stat is about $70,000. In 1970, the annual cost of tuition at a four-year school was 3% of average Joe's income, and in 2022, it costs 16%. These numbers say two very important things. One, the cost of tuition for a four-year degree has quadrupled since my dad went to college. And two, wages have stayed basically flat, rising only 6% in the same time frame, making the slice of pie for college triple that of what it was for him. Most jobs worth having in biology or laboratory physics, like what I majored in, require graduate work, probably a PhD. And as someone who worked closely with PhD hopefuls for several years and considered pursuing one myself, let me tell you, it looks like 6 extra years of agonizing hell. And after all that, the pay is comparably even worse than the bachelor's degree. Doctors and lawyers are traditionally very well compensated, well over $110,000, and many over $300,000. But because medical school and law school are two very expensive education pathways, the cost to earnings ratio is abysmal. Spending 3% of my income annually to study anything I want doesn't sound all that unreasonable. Today, 3% of a median income amounts to basically what a community college associate's degree is in most states. A vocational certificate such as real estate license or general contractor license or several other pathways. But spending 16% of my income for the same sort of promise does not sound reasonable because, after all, the other costs of living have also risen similarly and wages are still stagnant. As another argument, though, spending 16% of annual income for the possibility to increase my earning potential exponentially may be worth it, which is what the promise is in general. However, anything I want doesn't fall into that category. For example, engineering seems to be the golden ticket. Any type of engineering, mechanical, chemical, electrical, software, and on, engineering jobs pay out the wazoo for only bachelor level work. So, what if there is a more meaningful and effective way to go about encouraging teenagers and early adults to be effective members of society? Achieving Minerva, at its core, is all about finding your own version of personal freedom. I believe that money in the form of financial independence is a vital component of that quest, mostly because if you're not financially independent, then you are, by definition, dependent on active income, aka your job. Without a job, you would not survive indefinitely in the lifestyle you desire. So, also by definition, you are not personally free. But let me share with you some alternative ways to go about finding that independence without the shackles of 5 to 6 figures of student debt. First of all, let's do a little bit of math. On average, in the United States, a 4-year bachelor's degree at a public state university costs about $50,000. That's $10,000 per year in tuition plus fees. That includes all bachelor's degree, your English degree, political science, liberal arts, computer science, pre-med, medical engineering, pre-law, all of it. All costs are more or less the same. If you go to the financial services page on whatever state university you want to look at, the tuition is not broken down into departments. It's all the same. But then you have to look at the other end of school, the promise of higher paying jobs. The average salary for an individual holding an English degree is $45,000 or $21 per hour. For poli-sci, it's $53,000 or $25 an hour. Computer science, $104,000. Looking a little better, right? Engineering, $120,000, and usually starts at about $70,000 or $80,000. So given that small sample size, we can easily see that if all those degrees cost $50,000, English and poli-sci does less than break even. Computer science and engineering, more than break even by almost double. But what about doctors and lawyers? They make bank, right? Do they? Med school costs on average $50,000 per year. Over 4 years, that's $200,000 plus interest on any loans and any extra equipment or fees they have to go. Most med schools prefer that you have a bachelor's of science in biology, chemistry, or another science. So add in the $50,000 it took you to get through undergrad. A doctor comes out of med school and into residency already at least $300,000 in the hole. And this doesn't even include the extra schooling for a specialty. The average fresh white coat starts at around $110,000 salary, which isn't that bad, but they have $300,000 or more in loans to pay off that accrued interest the entire time they were in school and will continue to do so. Even a doctor has to spend a decade or more on average paying back their loans. That is, unless you adhere to the discipline of paying your debt early. Law school is a similar story. Average cost for law school is in the ballpark of $200,000 to $300,000, and the average salary for an attorney is about $130,000. Over the course of a career, the outcomes for docs and lawyers vary pretty widely. Some are wildly successful, some make the average, and some may choose to go the charity route. So now we're going to look at a couple alternatives to this traditional 4 years of school and debt, and maybe you might come out on top on the other side. Who knows? First example is nursing. In my state, as well as many, you can become a registered nurse for 2 years and about $2,000 in tuition at a community college. You come out with an extremely valuable credential and an associate's degree. Nurses with just a registered nurse associate's degree start usually around $60,000 to $80,000. From there, you can work on your bachelor's in nursing online and move up the ranks. And then ultimately, you can be a nurse practitioner, which are what's called a mid-level provider, nearly exactly equal to physician's assistants in many facilities. Just like that, you get to help people and spend a fraction of what it costs to go to med school to get there. Community college, now that we're speaking about it, is an excellent place to start for many. Like I said before, 18 years old is way too soon for most to have to decide what to major in. Community college is incredibly affordable compared to four-year universities and allows you to explore all the gen eds and knock out the less desirable ones for very cheap. That way, the bachelor's degree is effectively far cheaper, and hopefully you can be more selective in what to study. The military in the United States is also a great option as long as it doesn't conflict with your values or beliefs. The military starts paying you immediately. After 12 weeks in training, you've built up 3 months of paychecks and haven't spent a dime because food and lodging at basic training is provided. From there, you go off and get real-life experiences in the military. Some good, some not really good at all, but almost all of those experiences are very valuable. The military will pay for nearly any training you desire with the GI Bill. This is a good way to get college paid for. And if you decide to get out of the military honorably, you now have a great line on your resume saying that you served in the military. And if you stay, you can retire with full benefits in 20 years. And that's a fantastic pension. If you start at 18, you're done at age 38. That's not bad at all. There are plenty of other trades that pay really well relative to training costs. To name a few, electricians, plumbing, and pilots and aviation workers. Training in these sorts of trades and fields can be found for anywhere from $2,000 for electricians and plumbing up to $10,000 or maybe a little bit more for pilots and aviation. And many of these trades pay you during an apprenticeship. Look at all the options before you sign up to owe $50,000 or more in debt to go to a four-year college. The point here is treat your education like an investment. Find a path with a high return on investment and reap those returns. Learn how to achieve financial independence as quickly as possible by listening to this show, as well as others such as Money with Katie, reading blogs like Millennial Revolution, Mr. Money Mustache, Financial Samurai. Those are all great places to learn how to become financial independence. And then once you've done that with the high-paying job, then go live your dream. If you want to be a creative writer or marine biologist, by all means, please go do that. But make sure you have the buffer first by investing in your future when you're younger. That's where I'm going to leave it for now. If you would like to learn more about what's behind the veil of the ivory tower, I highly recommend the book A Case Against Education by Brian Kaplan. Brian is an economist at the University of California in Berkeley, and he really pulls no punches against his own industry of academia. Next time, we will be talking about part 2 of this indictment on education, which is the content, the curriculum of education. Until next time, please tell your friends about us, hit subscribe, find us on YouTube at Achieving Minerva, the channel. Engage with us on Twitter at Minerva_fire. We'd love to talk to you. But most importantly, please tell your friends about us. We're on all of your podcast platforms, and that way we can all achieve Minerva together.